What's up guys, eDrone here. Today we're going to be talking about the new firmware updates that make the DJI Mavic Air 2 even better. Stay tuned. Another firmware update has come out for the DJI Mavic Air 2, and it is a whopper. It is a doozy. It has a lot of changes that come to this drone that make this drone, which I feel has definitely been the drone of the year, even better. This drone is now going to be able to incorporate digital zoom and high resolution video. Let me tell you guys, I'm sorry I've been a little bit lacking in content here recently. I've had some issues with my Galaxy S10 Plus. I ended up having to get rid of that phone and upgrade to the new S20 Plus. And also, trying to keep up with these firmware updates has been a little bit challenging. So I had a video I was currently working on editing after the firmware update for the new gimbal sensitivity adjustments on the Mavic Air 2, as well as some of the display differences they've changed as far as the battery icon, things like that. And as I was editing that video, boom, DJI drops the bombshell firmware, which I believe is probably going to be the most significant, best firmware update we've seen yet for the new DJI Mavic Air 2. So let's go ahead. What I'm going to do in this video is we're going to go over test flights with the new firmware. Typically, guys, I usually wait a while before I go ahead and update firmware on my DJI drones, just because I like to see if there's any bugs that are in there that can get fixed over time. I'll check on the forums and check online to see how the firmware has affected other users. But for this video, I want to go ahead and get the firmware updated on the drone for you guys. That way I can test it out and just let you know and report back how my drone is functioning after doing the firmware updates. Let's go ahead and do the firmware update real quick on camera. I'll show you exactly how you go ahead and get it done if you're going to do it via Wi-Fi. That's the way I'm going to do it. You want to make sure that you have your battery charged to at least, I want to say, 65% or higher before doing a firmware update. Also, you want to have at least 60% or more on your controller. Make sure you have at least 3 of those lights lit up on your battery indicator. Now, once you've got your drone battery charged up, plus your controller, you're now ready to go ahead and get this drone updated with firmware and also get your app updated for the new DJI Fly app updates. So I'm running Android, so I had to wait also for the new updates to come out for Android because DJI put the iOS update out first. One really key thing you want to make sure is when you're going to go ahead and update this firmware via Wi-Fi, make sure you have a nice, strong, sturdy connection. Make sure you don't have a lot of other devices hooked to the Wi-Fi at the same time. That's going to slow down your progression of the firmware update and also could lead to some problems later on down the road. You can also update the firmware via USB-C and go ahead and plug into the drone here and plug it into your PC. Download the firmware that way. I don't typically do it that way, but that is an option if you don't have good Wi-Fi service. So now, you've got your batteries charged, you're ready to go ahead and update the firmware. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and get everything connected, power on the drone, then you're going to go ahead and power on your controller, hook your device to the controller. Now we have everything powered on, we're going to go ahead and select the About. Go to the About tab here in the DJI Fly app, and then you're going to go ahead and scroll down and you're going to go ahead and check for updates on the Craft firmware, the FlySafe database, and just make sure you have the latest updates for your DJI Fly app on your mobile device or whatever device you're using to control and get your video for the Mavic Air 2. Go ahead and hit that update button. It's going to take, roughly, mine took about 6 or 7 minutes. You do not want to touch the drone. You don't want to touch any of the buttons while the firmware is updating. Just let it completely do its thing. You'll hear the drone reset a couple times. Make sure all that happens. And then what I like to do personally is once the firmware update has been completed, I like to go ahead and power cycle the drone itself. Go ahead and turn that drone off and then turn it back on. Same thing for the remote controller. Go ahead and turn that off, turn it back on, and then reconnect everything. Now, once you've got the firmware update completed, make sure you go into your settings and double check all of your settings. Make sure they're where you want them. After these major firmware updates, some of the settings may have been switched to default, or they may be different from what you last selected. Make sure you check out my DJI Mavic Air 2 playlist. I'll put it up in the corner there. I got a lot of videos on here showing some tutorials on how to do some of the functionality that this drone has to offer. So now we got the firmware updated on the Mavic Air 2. Now we can go ahead and take this guy out and do some test flights, and we'll test out some of these new features and functions. In this new update, we have actually added digital zoom. So if we click over here on the photo video button here, you can see we have the new option of 4K zoom. Now, what I did notice is in the 4K zoom, we're able to go to 24, 25, and 30 frames per second for the digital zoom. Let's go ahead and hit 4K 30. We go ahead and click out of that. We have a couple options as to how we can use our zoom. So first, on the right hand side, there's a button here. You can tap it. You tap that button, and if you hold it and scroll with your finger, you can actually zoom out that way. Okay, you seeing that there? You can just tap it and hold it, and it zooms in just by tapping the button. And it does give you like a vibration with the controller, which is nice. Now, the better way I think of doing it is, and thanks to numerous members out in the community that have, it's been multiple sources now that have figured this out and confirmed this. But if we hold the function button and use the scroll wheel, the gimbal wheel, we can actually zoom in with that wheel now. And that actually gives us a little bit more options here. And I think it's a lot easier to do it that way. So hold down the function button and then scroll with the gimbal wheel, and you can see we have a nice little zoom there. Now, let's go ahead and record so we can show you some of this footage. So I'm at 1x zoom, 4K at 30 frames per second. Let's go ahead and zoom in and see if we lose any degradation on that video. Okay, so there's the 2x zoom. Doesn't look too bad from what I can see. Not too bad at all. So that's the 4K. Let's go ahead and stop recording, and let's go back into the photo video button, and you can see if we go to 2.7K, we now have the options of 24 all the way up to 60 frames per second. So 2.7K, we're able to zoom in by 2, just like at 4K. And if we go to 1080p, we're actually able to zoom in 4 times. So let me select 1080p, and we go ahead and function on that wheel, and we're going to zoom in. You gimbal up just a little bit here. All right, let's try this again. We're going to zoom in 4 times at 1080p. So you can see there's a little bit of loss of degradation in the video because this is a digital zoom, but nevertheless, you can still see what's down there on the ground. You can still see a little bit of the grass stripes there. Not too bad, actually, and probably on a sunnier day, you'd be able to see it a little bit better. So that's a 1080p 4x zoom. Let's go ahead and zoom back out. So I don't think I would probably be using the 1080p zoom very often just because of the loss of degradation, but if you can't get close enough to a subject that you're trying to record, that is an option that you can do. So see if I zoom in on the car here. There you go, you can kind of see a little bit of the pixelation there on the trees. You can see a little bit, but it's something you could definitely utilize, and I actually think it's a really nice feature just to be able to zoom, especially just if you're just scanning an area, you're just looking for some possible shots. That 4x zoom is definitely going to help you out. There you go. So that's 1080p zoomed. You can still definitely see, the area. Not the worst. Got a little bit of loss of degradation in the video, but not bad. And now what we can actually do is what's called a dolly zoom. So DJI hasn't made this like a autonomous flight mode yet, but hopefully they will in a firmware update. Let me back up a little bit, and let's just use this canvas here. I'm going to come down just a little bit. Okay, so we're going to use this circle as a reference. So for the dolly zoom, what we're going to want to do is, let's do 1080p because we can actually zoom in ×4. I think that's going to give us a much better effect on the dolly zoom, and let's do 60 frames per second. That'll make it look nice. All right, so go ahead and let me back up a little bit. And I'm in normal mode to perform these shots. Okay, so let's go ahead and zoom all the way in. I'm going to zoom in ×4. All right, we're going to go ahead and push record. Now, I'm going to move forward at the same time that I am zooming, and that's going to give us that nice vertigo effect. So pretty cool that you're actually able to do that with a digital zoom. You can actually do the dolly shot now that we've talked about the zooms and the frame rates. Let's go ahead and talk about the hyperlapse options now. Waypoint hyperlapse. Okay, and we're able to set our waypoints like we always were. I was getting some questions about, can you set waypoints on the map? As of now, I can't see a way to do it. I've tried setting waypoints on the map, and it just hasn't been working. So the only way I can see to do it is to actually just, get there and, start your waypoint, hit plus, and then just move the drone where you're going to want it for the next hyperlapse. And then we'll hit plus again. Now I'll come forward a little bit more. Notice I'm flying in a straight line even though it's not straight down the road. And we're gonna go. And you actually have the option to set up 45 points. Now, you're not going to have enough battery on one battery to do a 45-point hyperlapse, so this is the beauty of it. You can now save the hyperlapses. So now that we have the hyperlapse in here, we can click on this little paper button here, and we actually go into Task Library, and you can actually click Save, and that will actually save the hyperlapse for you. So we can save the hyperlapse, and we have number of waypoints 3, so we can actually go back at a different time and get that hyperlapse. So that's a really cool option, really easy to do. I love that they actually added that. So really, really neat. So that's the hyperlapse there. You actually can save waypoints now, up to 45 different points for your hyperlapses.
The aircraft is heading to the first waypoint.
I'll go ahead and speed this up. That way you can see the hyperlapse. Alright guys, so we went ahead and did that hyperlapse. I'll pop that up for you so you can see it. So I'm going to go in here to my safety. And when we look at obstacle avoidance now, we have a whole bunch of new menus here. We have a different layout. So for normal mode, you see we have bypass, which is going to go around an object in order to get that shot for you. We have braking, which will just slow down and stop and hover. And then we have off, which will just turn the obstacle avoidance completely off in normal mode here. We switch over to sport mode, you can see it automatically goes to off. There is no bypass or braking in sport mode. There is no obstacle avoidance in sport mode. If we go to tripod mode, you can see we have the option of brake or off. Now let me go into normal here. And we're going to go to bypass for normal mode. Disable sideways flight is a new option they've added on here in the firmware as well. So if you have this selected, the drone will not be able to fly sideways in flight. It will maintain straight no matter what you do on the right stick. If you notice here on the screen, we also have a new battery indicator, which I really like. It's got the nice green, bright colors you can see up against the light sky. So definitely improvement there. We also have some times here. We have some times that's going to tell us how long until the craft returns to home, how long it goes into a forced landing, and how long until the battery is depleted. So you can see we have 1 minute 4 seconds until return to home. We have 4 minutes and 30 seconds until it does a forced landing. We have 7 minutes and 7 seconds until the battery is completely depleted. I really do like that option. I'm really glad they put that on there. The only critique I have for the new app interface is I wish they would put the micro SD card information somewhere on the screen here so that you could just look at it at a glance and see how much time you have left on your micro SD card. But you can always just go into the 3 dots in the corner here. You can go down to camera. And if you come down here, you can see at SD card, there's 29 gigs, 29.6 available. So that you can always just go there, as well as your internal storage. If you notice here on the left side, there's actually a little green icon now. If you actually click on that, you see how it went off? I just disabled my obstacle avoidance. So you can go ahead and hit that again, and that enables your safety assistance with the sideways mode off. We now have a FPV mode, which we're able to do by moving the 2 sticks to make the gimbal actually look like an FPV drone. So if we go here to control, select FPV mode. Now when we move the drone forward, if we move the 2 joysticks, you can see the gimbal kind of slants in the horizon, but you can see the horizon is now tilted because it's flying in FPV mode. So that's a little option you can do if you want to have the gimbal actually look like an FPV drone. But you just have to use both of the sticks to accomplish this. So as you're flying, you can just move the sticks and you'll see it just kind of bank to the left or the right and kind of look like an FPV experience. It definitely isn't the best. I think it could use some tweaking, which hopefully we'll see in a future firmware update. Okay, another update on this firmware is we actually have way more gimbal sensitivity adjustment features now. I don't know, maybe you guys didn't know this before, but the gimbal wheel actually was kind of dynamic from the get-go before the update, meaning that if you move the gimbal wheel slowly, the gimbal would pitch up and down slowly, and if you moved it quickly, it would move quicker. But you were kind of stuck at, whatever the gimbal wheel would move, the gimbal, those settings was all you had. And a lot of people were complaining they wanted more customized gimbal settings. So if you go here to the 3 dots, come over here to control, you can go to advanced gimbal settings. Now we have a whole bunch of new options here. We have in every single mode as well. So in normal, sport, and tripod mode, we all have settings that we can actually customize for each individual mode. So let's go ahead and look in normal mode. Now we have pitch speed. If we go ahead and raise this, when I pitch forward, it's a lot faster. So if you want the gimbal to be real fast, real touchy, real sensitive, turn that all the way up. If you go back in here and turn this all the way down, you'll see the gimbal pitch will be much slower. Very, very slow, actually. Yeah, go back in here and we'll just turn this to 30. Now we have smoothness. Let's turn this all the way up for pitch smoothness. So if we pitch the gimbal down, I let off, it keeps coasting. So it's almost like a brake for the gimbal. So I'm pitching up, I'm letting off, and you can see how much more it kind of smoothed out that motion, so it wasn't like a sudden stop. This is a little bit too much, kind of feels like you're on a icy skating rink and you just can't keep it locked in. So I definitely wouldn't recommend using that all the way to 30. If you come back here to 0, now we're going to have no pitch smoothness. So when we let off the gimbal wheel, it's going to stop immediately. It's also going to give you jerky movement, so I wouldn't recommend that either. Go back in here. I'll tell you what I recommend in just a second. Go to the yaw rotation speed. Now we can actually slow down the yaw of the aircraft. So now I'm yawing and it's nice and slow, which I like. You don't have that fast jerky yaw, so that's good. That gives you a way more cinematic yaw right there. See that? Now on the opposite end of the spectrum, if we go here and turn this yaw rotation speed all the way up, you're going to get a crazy high yaw maneuver and it's going to look jerky and you might not want that. However, sometimes you might not want the yaw to be as slow. You wouldn't want that to be all the way down to 20, because let's just say you're flying around and you see something to your left and you're like, oh, I want to get that shot. Well, with that slow yaw speed, you might not be able to get to it in time. So you might want to be able to have a faster yaw speed just to get locked on whatever you're doing. You also have yaw smoothness. So if you turn that up and we let off the yaw, you can see it's still moving. So I'm holding yaw, I'm letting off, and it's still moving, just like that ice rink scenario. And then obviously if you go the other way, when you let off the yaw stick, it's just going to stop abruptly. It's going to look very jerky. You're not going to want that. You're going to want some smoothness in there. So let me show you what I recommend, guys. For my settings, come down here and just hit reset, put everything back to stock. Now, as I'm looking at the gimbal wheel, I'm going to move it a little bit slower just to see the whole range of motion. That feels pretty good on the pitch. I actually probably want a little bit more on the smoothness. So I'm going to go ahead and set that pitch smoothness to 10. Let's try that. Oh yeah, that's a lot better. That's better. So 10 on the smoothness. Let's go to the yaw rotation speed. Let's see what the yaw. That yaw is a little bit too fast for me, honestly. That yaw is still a little bit too fast. So what I would recommend is going in here and we're going to turn that yaw rotation speed down to, let's say, 50. Let's try that. Oh yeah, that's good enough to where if I need to jerk the drone over to get a shot real quick, I can. And I can also still move it nice and slow and cinematic like that by not giving it as much stick response. So yeah, that feels good right there. That feels good. Let's talk about the smoothness. I think it needs a little bit more smoothness on the yaw. Let's take this up to like 10. All right, so now we're on 10 with the yaw smoothness. That feels good. So it gives you a little bit more buffer when you let off that yaw to where it's not just an abrupt stop. So if I want to really zoom in like this and then stop, that looks pretty good. That's what I recommend for the settings, but honestly guys, the settings are going to be different for each individual. I recommend you just take your drone out, go out there, play around with it, and see what settings work best for you. I'm glad that DJI is listening. They're listening to the customers. They're giving us what we're asking for. All right, so we're tracking the car now. Okay, so it's doing a little spin there, and it's going to go ahead and follow the car. And we do have the obstacle avoidance move on. It does say the target is moving too fast. It's still tracing it, but we lost it. It tried though. All right, so we are tracking the vehicle. It's doing a really good job. It's telling me that it's too fast, but it's doing a really good job of keeping up, actually. So I would definitely say that the vehicle tracking has definitely been enhanced. And it lost it right there on the turn. And we are in sport mode. And we're going to go ahead and hit forward. And as you can see, the gimbal just stayed locked into place. You didn't get any of that jerky movement. I'm glad that DJI addressed that in this firmware update. I must say, this has been my favorite GPS camera drone that I've had thus far, and now I can't believe they made it even better. I can't believe they put zoom in this drone. I mean, I think that they're definitely trying to make this drone the flagship drone of the year, and they're doing a really good job. All the functionalities work great for me. I'm so happy with the firmware update. I'm happy with the additional features and layouts of the app, and I feel like it's only going to get better. But put a comment down below if you have any questions about updating firmware for your new DJI Mavic Air 2. Also, I'd like you to put down in the comments if you've had any experiences with updating firmware, via good or bad, with a DJI product or your new DJI Mavic Air 2. Please put it down in the comment section. We would love to see how everybody's experience has been with these new larger firmware updates. We got definitely some big changes that are coming to this drone, and I just couldn't be more excited about what's to come. And just make sure you stay tuned to the channel, because there's going to be more DJI Mavic Air 2 videos to come, so stay tuned for that. Until next time, guys, thanks for watching. eDrone out.